A U.S. fighter jet has been shot down over southern Iran, and right now, American forces are in a desperate race against an Iranian manhunt to bring one missing crew member home. This just changed everything on the battlefield. Yesterday, an F-15E Strike Eagle was taken down in Khuzestan province. One crew member was located and rescued by U.S. Special Operations teams operating deep inside Iranian territory. The second, a weapons systems officer, remains unaccounted for. What happened today signals a dangerous new phase in this conflict. For the first time in this war, the United States has lost an aircraft over Iranian soil. Rescue helicopters have already taken fire. Iranian forces are actively hunting the missing airman, with public appeals and rewards offered to anyone who turns him in. Here's what you need to understand. This is no longer just about airstrikes. It's now a ground-level recovery operation in hostile territory, where every hour counts and every move risks escalation. The U.S. military is deploying specialized search and rescue assets, while Iranian security forces close in. Most people are missing how fragile this window really is. But this is where the story changes, because the outcome of this single rescue mission could reshape the next weeks of the war. This incident didn't happen in isolation. Over the past 72 hours, U.S. and allied air operations intensified strikes on Iranian military infrastructure in the south. The F-15E was part of a deep strike package targeting missile sites near the Iraq border when it was hit by a surface-to-air missile. The crew ejected successfully. One pilot was extracted within hours by a U.S. Special Operations team already positioned in the region. The second airman's last known transmission placed him roughly 40 kilometers from the crash site, moving toward extraction coordinates. Key actors are now locked in motion. U.S. Central Command coordinating from Qatar and forward bases, elite Special Operations units on the ground, and Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps units rapidly deploying search teams supported by local militias. What led to this moment is clear. Sustained pressure on Iran's air defense network finally created a gap, but that gap came with risk. Iranian forces have adapted quickly, using mobile SAM systems and civilian reporting networks. And this is where things shift. The downed aircraft has handed Tehran a rare propaganda victory and a live bargaining chip if they capture the missing officer. Right now, the clock is ticking. Every passing hour tightens the Iranian net while U.S. recovery teams push deeper into contested territory. What happens in the next 24 to 48 hours will determine whether this remains a contained rescue operation or spirals into something far larger. What exactly unfolded on the ground reveals a high-stakes cat-and-mouse game playing out in real time. The F-15E Strike Eagle was struck by a mobile Iranian surface-to-air missile system in Khuzestan province yesterday. Both crew members ejected safely. The pilot was located and extracted within hours by a U.S. Special Operations team using low-level helicopter insertion under cover of darkness. The weapons systems officer, however, landed in more contested terrain. His emergency beacon activated briefly before going silent. U.S. forces immediately launched a full personnel recovery operation involving HH-60G Pavehawk helicopters, supported by overhead fixed-wing assets and ground teams already operating near the border. But this is where the story changes. Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps units responded within minutes. They established roadblocks, mobilized local militias in the Arab-majority region, and publicly offered substantial rewards for information leading to the airman's capture. Verified footage shows Iranian forces and armed tribesmen sweeping the area on foot and in vehicles. During the operation, at least one U.S. Black Hawk helicopter took ground fire, forcing evasive maneuvers. Recovery teams have since narrowed the search grid, but face increasing resistance as Iranian forces tighten their perimeter. The uncertainty is deliberate on both sides. The U.S. is operating with limited visibility and denied airspace. Iran is using the incident to demonstrate control over its territory, while hoping to turn the missing officer into a strategic asset. Right now, every decision, route selection, timing of movements, rules of engagement, carries the weight of potential escalation. What happens in these next critical hours will decide if this remains a rescue mission or becomes the spark for a far more dangerous confrontation on the ground. This rescue operation carries weight far beyond one missing airman. The downed F-15E represents the first confirmed loss of a U.S. combat aircraft over Iranian territory in this conflict. That single event has shifted the operational reality on the ground. For the United States, successfully recovering the weapons systems officer is non-negotiable. It protects operational security, prevents sensitive technology from falling into Iranian hands, and maintains morale across forward-deployed units. For Iran, capturing the American officer would deliver a major propaganda win and a potential high-value bargaining chip. It would also demonstrate that Tehran can still impose costs deep inside its own borders, despite sustained U.S. air superiority. What changed structurally is this. The battlefield has expanded downward. Air campaigns are no longer fought only in the skies. They now include immediate ground recovery races that test special operations capabilities in hostile territory. This mission tests the effectiveness of U.S. personnel recovery doctrine against a determined state adversary equipped with modern surveillance and rapid response forces. Success here signals to allies, and to adversaries like China, that American forces can still operate effectively even when an aircraft is lost. Failure, on the other hand, would hand Iran a tangible victory and could embolden further aggression against U.S. and allied assets in the region. Here's what you need to understand. This is no longer just a tactical rescue. It has become a strategic contest over control, credibility, and deterrence in the Middle East. The outcome will influence how both sides approach future strikes and how willing Washington is to push deeper into Iranian airspace. What's happening here is not just a rescue, it's a test of doctrine under pressure. The United States has built its entire combat philosophy around one principle: no one gets left behind. That isn't symbolic, it's strategic. Because the moment that belief weakens, pilot confidence drops, mission risk calculations change, and operational tempo slows. Right now, that doctrine is being stress-tested in real time. Here's the pattern most people miss. In past conflicts, U.S. personnel recovery missions operated in fragmented or low-control environments. Iraq, Afghanistan, even Syria. The opposition could disrupt but not fully coordinate. This time is different. Iran is a centralized state actor with layered defenses, local networks, and rapid response capability. That means the U.S. is no longer just searching for a survivor, it's racing a system. And this is where strategy becomes clear. Washington is likely prioritizing speed over stealth. Small, agile teams, limited footprint, minimal escalation triggers. The objective is simple: get in, extract, get out, before Iran can consolidate control of the area. But that creates risk, because moving fast increases exposure, and exposure increases the chance of direct confrontation. On the other side, Iran's strategy is equally calculated. They don't need immediate capture, they just need delay. Tighten the search grid, use civilians, flood the area with presence, turn time into pressure. What this signals right now is a shift toward denial warfare, where Iran may not match U.S. power, but can disrupt its precision. And here's the critical insight. Both sides are trying to control the clock. The U.S. needs hours, Iran needs time. Whoever wins that race determines not just the outcome of this mission, but the rules of engagement going forward. Because if recovery becomes too costly, future operations change. And that's the real objective behind the battlefield. But the other side tells a different story. From Tehran's perspective, this is not a crisis, it's an opportunity. Iran is framing the downed aircraft as proof that U.S. air superiority is not absolute. The narrative is simple and controlled. A foreign power violated sovereign airspace and paid the price. That message is being reinforced domestically and across regional media channels. But beneath that messaging, there's a more calculated strategy unfolding. Iran does not necessarily need to capture the missing officer immediately. In fact, a prolonged search may serve them better. It keeps U.S. forces exposed, it forces repeated incursions, and it increases the chances of a larger confrontation on Iranian soil. Here's the pattern. Iran has historically avoided direct, large-scale clashes with U.S. forces, but it excels at controlled escalation, applying pressure just below the threshold of full conflict. This situation fits that model perfectly. By mobilizing local militias and incentivizing civilian reporting, Iran expands its surveillance network without committing to overt military escalation. It turns the environment itself into a tracking system, and this is where the miscalculation risk grows. If U.S. forces interpret Iranian movements as an imminent capture attempt, they may escalate force protection measures, more aircraft, more firepower, more aggressive extraction tactics. From Iran's view, that escalation can be used to justify a broader response. What this means is both sides are operating under different assumptions. The U.S. sees urgency, Iran sees leverage. And when urgency meets leverage, decision-making compresses. That's when mistakes happen. And in this environment, a single misstep doesn't stay tactical, it becomes strategic very quickly. This isn't just a military story, it's an economic signal. What happened today could move markets faster than any official policy announcement. Here's what you need to understand. The moment a U.S. aircraft is lost inside Iran, risk perception changes globally. Not gradually, instantly. And markets react to risk first, facts second. Oil is the first pressure point. Any escalation involving Iran puts the Strait of Hormuz back into focus. Nearly 20% of global oil flows through that corridor. Even the possibility of disruption pushes prices upward, and that flows directly to you. Gas prices don't wait for full-scale conflict. They rise on anticipation. A prolonged rescue operation, increased military presence, or even rumors of retaliation can push crude higher within days. But it doesn't stop there. Higher fuel costs raise transportation expenses. That feeds into food prices. Supply chains tighten. Inflation pressure builds again, right when economies are trying to stabilize. And this is where it gets serious. If the situation escalates further, insurance costs for shipping in the region spike. That affects global trade routes, delays deliveries, and raises costs across everyday goods, from groceries to electronics. Jobs are part of this equation too. Uncertainty slows investment, companies pause expansion, markets become volatile. That trickles down into hiring decisions and wage growth. What this means for you is simple. A single downed jet can ripple through your daily expenses within weeks. Most people see a distant conflict, but the real impact shows up at the gas pump and at the grocery store. What happens next depends on one variable: time. Right now, there are 3 realistic paths, and each one leads to a very different outcome. First scenario: rapid extraction. If U.S. forces locate and recover the missing officer within the next 24 hours, the situation stabilizes. Washington contains the incident, limits escalation, and continues air operations with adjusted tactics. The message is clear. Even under pressure, recovery works. Second scenario: delayed contact. If the search stretches into multiple days, risk compounds. More U.S. assets enter the area. Iran increases patrol density. The probability of direct engagement rises sharply. This is where a rescue mission turns into a localized confrontation. And then there's the third scenario, the most dangerous: capture. If Iran reaches the officer first, the entire dynamic shifts. This becomes a political and strategic crisis overnight. Pedagogor leverage emerges. Airlam narratives intensify. And Washington faces a decision: negotiate, apply pressure, or escalate. This just changed everything. Because now the conflict is no longer defined by airstrikes, it's defined by human leverage. Here's the critical insight. Both sides are preparing for all 3 outcomes simultaneously. Which means even in a successful rescue, escalation risks don't disappear. They evolve. What this signals right now is a conflict entering a more unpredictable phase, where small events trigger outsized consequences. And what happens next won't just shape this mission. It will define how far this confrontation is willing to go. If you want to stay ahead of what comes next, follow closely, because the next 48 hours may set the tone for everything that follows.